Okay, so fun story. Well, no, not fun story. Partially an update. Things might be kind of hairy with streaming and all here over until about the end of December because of work schedule things. But I'll try to work things in as I can. So that'll be exciting. I think I'll be able to work around it for the most part. But yeah, if things like get shifted around and I stream a little bit earlier than normal or a bit later or whatever, then yeah, there it is. Things are just kind of weird. But so a lot of things have been happening, and it's very interesting to watch the world burn. For the most part, if anybody's been paying attention to what's been going on, then they know that there are a few states that are up in the air on election results, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. Well, no. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what happens with those results, because who was it? Their handle is CodeMonkeyZ. I can't remember what things that they worked on, but they were talking about the Dominion software documentation and all the different configuration options that it has, and some of them don't quite make sense. Like, it's odd. So for the software, you can obviously vote straight ticket like on a paper ballot. So if you vote straight ticket, it ticks everyone within that party that you put in. So the software lets you also put in not just the standard parties, but also third party names. And so when you vote straight ticket, if someone isn't in the party that you're voting straight ticket on, then they'll be skipped. So if, say, if a president were put into a third party by a typo that looks really similar to the way you would type out the other party members in that party, then by voting straight ticket, you would skip that candidate that should be in the straight party ballot but isn't. Another thing that you run into is these security keys. You have to look into the software and see how it's configured. And so since you have poll watchers on both sides legally that are checking the ballots, and some of the rules for poll watchers weren't quite equal on both sides, depending on the state, then that's up in the air. But if the computer systems didn't have checks from both sides, then how do you know that the configuration was set up correctly? So there are a lot of holes in this that make it really interesting. You could mention like affiliations with parties and peoples and conflicts of interest that way, but that's a whole other thing. This is just like, so he's gone through the documentation for the software though and kind of looked at this, and it's like, well, why do you need all these other options? And honestly, in my opinion, when you're looking at something that way, where you're like going through that way, if you're voting straight party, I think it would be much better if you actually had to fill in all the boxes if you're voting straight party. So you know what the system is doing or is supposed to do, rather than, well, you expect when you vote straight party in a computer system that it ticks everyone straight party. But by having to go through each person, then you can know much better what to expect to happen and what to go through. And if that doesn't happen, then you know that either something in the computer system messed up or someone did something off that made it do the wrong thing. So you could have, for example, hypothetically, you could have a configuration that would flip votes around from one person to another person. So let's say you take, hypothetically, you have a Democrat candidate that is running for a Senate seat, and you've got a third party that's running for the same Senate seat. So if you could configure that software potentially to switch the vote from the Democrat to the third party in our hypothetical situation. And I believe that was one of the other options mentioned in the thread. There's his timeline. There's a whole thread where he talks about the various options that there are, and just kind of glancing at a couple of them, yeah, some of it didn't make sense. And beyond that, after, what was it, DEF CON had a voting machine village where they basically tried to crack into the voting machines, and it took them less than an hour to get in and be able to change things. And there's still no security council for these voting machines and no voting regulations and standards. So you literally we're still running on systems where there are no security standards, and it very well could easily be set up to flip votes around. With no security on these voting machines, how do we expect the standards to be kept, if you get my drift? So how do we know that everything's really secure when there's hardly a security council for these voting situations? And yeah, that does create an opening for voter fraud because of those security issues. And just like we saw in some cases where people are posting on social media, literally videos of them taking multiple ballots and just filling in the Biden check mark on them. So that's kind of a thing that can create an opening. And I know that hasn't been a measure that people have really talked about, but that is an issue. And especially with these software glitches that people have talked about in, Michigan, with the one county that flipped 6,000 votes one direction, and how multiple other states used it and multiple other counties in Michigan used it, that does become an issue. So even if it went one way, I think for the most part, people want to make sure that it was a fair election. And if we've got these issues, we need to figure them out. And if they were there before, then I guess this was an issue that somehow magnified it, such that we could see that, wow, and figure it out. So yeah, subscribe star and stuff down in the description. Drop me a few dollars. There, you can check out the rewards. I've added a couple things to it. I do plan on adding more stuff to that as time goes on and I'm able to upgrade stuff. So I will see you all later.